The exercise is real. The bullets aren't. These New Guinea troops are learning the tactics of jungle warfare. One day they might need to use these skills along New Guinea's troubled border with Indonesia. If that happens, one way or another, Australia will be involved.
I thought I knew Australians' relationship, but I don't know. You know, they're so hidden away, trying to pretend that they do not know anything. That's really bad.
Travel from swing right! Down from swing left! Swing left! Come inside!
Just 5 kilometres away from New Guinea's border with the Indonesian province of West Irian is the Catholic mission at Canberra Toro. As the mission priest here puts it, in recent months the congregation has increased, but the collection hasn't. In all, nearly 1,000 West Irianese have crossed the border to take refuge at the mission. That creates a problem for the church and a dilemma for the New Guinea government. The church has the problem of feeding them. The government, the dilemma of deciding what to do with them. As for the border crossers themselves, they're in no hurry to go back.
I only prayed because Indonesia will come and kill more penis.
Right, Albert is saying that these people here are civilians and they are afraid. They're afraid of the Indonesians killing them.
Do they have any real specific reason to be afraid? Is there any direct evidence they have of Indonesians either threatening or killing these people?
Right, one para ask him now. You got some para ask belong this para parade. You look long some para something or hard him some para something. This para parade him. Also my name.
This para ting long. One long Jayapura.
He's saying that there is fighting all the way along from Jayapura or along the border, so it's not safe for the people to stay. At Ubrup there was a big fight, and after that the people were afraid. The Indonesians came into one of the villages nearby where these people used to stay, and they were afraid, and so they left for their lives.
It's difficult to gauge the truth of the stories told by these people. The Indonesian government declined Four Corners' request to visit West Irian. Father John Curtis has had a chance to make his own assessment.
Yes, they're definitely frightened. Last week I was in Vonimo and we heard stories from all that end of town and from along here. The people are definitely afraid. People don't leave a home where they've got food and shelter and clothing and suddenly come over here. They don't really know the reception they're going to get. They hope someone will look after them, but you don't leave for nothing.
Are you hearing stories of mistreatment on the other side of the border here?
Part of the difficulty in my position is most of them speak Malay and I speak so little of that. But I have heard some stories here and I've heard a lot from Invonimo, incidents that have happened, you know, troops coming over at the side of the border onto gardens of people. There was a hanging that we heard of recently over there. It's quite frightening.
Elsewhere on the border, things are more peaceful. At the western end of the village of Wutung, there's a survey mark. It's hard to imagine any place that looks less like an international border crossing, but that's what it is. There are no guards, no barbed wire fences, no rubber stamps. The locals here have land on both sides of the border and wander freely back and forth. Whatever the line on the map indicates, it doesn't mark any fundamental difference between the people who live on either side of it. They're all Melanesians, but some are ruled by Indonesia. Formal Indonesian rule of West Irian began in 1969. This footage was filmed a year before that in the Highlands, as the people prepared to vote in a referendum. The Dutch had moved out. The Indonesians made it clear they intended to move in. The United Nations called the referendum an act of free choice. The cynics called it the act of no choice.
One man, one vote. Can an act of self-determination have any meaning for people like these?
Do you wish
to remain with Indonesia? Do you want independence? The question, translated into the Dani language, brings only a look of quiet surmise.
So in 1969, West Irian became Irian Jaya and part of the Indonesian Republic. With a population of just over 1 million, the Indonesians' easternmost province is a small fraction of their total population. There are 92 million on the island of Java alone. That prompted the Indonesian government to start a program of transmigration, moving landless peasants from overcrowded Java to new communities in Irian Jaya.
The transmigration system is bringing in landless people and giving them land. And the Indonesian attitude to land, the Indonesian government's attitude to land, the Australian government's attitude to land, I suppose, the Australian people's attitude to land is quite different to a Melanesian attitude to land. The Melanesian attitude to land, I suppose, is like the Aboriginal attitude to land. Land is supremely important. And a lot of the people who have come over this time, certainly the ones I have spoken to on the coast, say that the issue at the heart of it all is that the people are losing their land and not being compensated for it.
Mr. Samari, the last few weeks have seen quite an influx of people crossing the border from Indonesia, from West Irian into this country. Now, there has been that problem for a while, but do you think the recent numbers mark a new phase of an old problem, or is it simply a new problem altogether?
I think it's completely a new problem. It was not something like what happened in 1960s and 70s, late 70s. It's quite a new problem. There has been a lot of dissatisfaction by the Indonesian authorities. I think what they are doing is they are going in and looking for the OPM activists and going into the villages where they think villages are supporting the OPM.
Perhaps it's men like these the Indonesians have been chasing. They're now refugees at Canberra Toro, but they could be members of the OPM, the Free Papua movement, a secret rebel army dedicated to the overthrow of Indonesian rule in West Irian. This rare footage of some OPM men in uniform was filmed by the Channel 9 Sunday program in 1982. It's bending the language to call the OPM an army. More often than not, their most powerful weapon is a bow and arrow, or a pre-war 303. They're overwhelmingly outnumbered and outgunned by the Indonesian army, but in true guerrilla fashion, they know the jungle like nobody else. That makes them hard to find. Hunting OPM rebels is one of the jobs of the men in this helicopter. Somewhere down there, New Guinea stops and Indonesia starts. This is the OPM's training ground. From here, they mount their sneak attacks on Indonesian patrols across the border. It's not a situation the New Guinea government happily tolerates. Police patrols are sent to outlying villages to check on movements of people across the border. The aim is to stop OPM activists finding sanctuary on the New Guinea side of the border. But the jungle is the OPM's greatest ally. It sometimes makes it impossible to tell where the border actually is.
This isn't really a war, so strictly speaking, this is not the front line, but it is the border between Indonesia and Papua New Guinea. And this is one of the many tracks that cross over in remote areas of the country. And the men behind me aren't soldiers. They're members of the Papua New Guinea Constabulary. And that says a lot about the way the New Guinea government views this problem.
The government has given this job to the police because it wants to avoid army manoeuvres along the border. And Jakarta might see that as provocative. And, strictly speaking, it is simply a task of immigration control. But the police have no radio contact with their ground patrols, and there are only 2 helicopters to cover 800 kilometres of border. This isn't a token effort. It's just an impossible job. Even so, it wasn't difficult for Four Corners to find the self-styled president of the OPM when both the New Guinea police and the Indonesian military couldn't.
General, how do you do? How do you do?
The difference was that James Niaro wanted to speak to us. He arranged an interview at a secret location near the border. Which side of it we were, he wasn't saying.
General, how can you hope to conquer the Indonesian army? They have soldiers, they have planes. How is it that you could hope to win against them?
I don't fight for them. I will fight so long I live. When I get my independence, I can stop it. I never Indonesian, so they live in my land. I will fight until they go out from my country, then I can stop it.
But your men have sometimes bows and arrows only old rifles. This man behind you has a tomahawk. This is not...
That's true. My soldiers, they have only bow and spear, no gun. We haven't gun.
Despite his gentle manner, James Niaro heads a group of men who have killed both Indonesian soldiers and civilians. These grisly photographs were taken by OPM troops after they killed an Indonesian doctor and an army officer 2 months ago. They were first shot dead, and their bodies were later pierced with arrows to show revenge, they say, against the Indonesian government.
Recently you killed 2 men. There was a kidnapping of a pilot and you killed 2 men. Do you feel any concern about that? Do you feel as a Christian that that is something not right?
We as Christian people must not kill other men, other people. This means we make sins for God. But in the revolution time, he must kill against another nation. That make us harmful. That's my hope and my heart feels so.
What do you think of Mr. Samari's policies about the problems here?
Mr. Samari is very to Indonesian.
He's what? Would you mind saying that again?
He's very loved to Indonesian.
He likes the Indonesians,
He
you
likes
say?
Indonesian, not to his own nation, Papuan.
But can you understand he doesn't want to make an enemy of the Indonesians?
I don't know why he's no feel love to us.
We did not use violence. We did not use weapon. Ours was a peaceful activist movement asking for independence for Papua New Guinea. We use our mind, we use our intelligence to get what we want. And that's the best way to reach any solution. You don't use violence, because if you use violence, you don't win.
In the New Guinea Parliament, Michael Samari's opinions about the OPM are widely accepted. But his view that any problems in West Irian are no concern of New Guinea is not. Iambiki Okuk is the leader of the opposition.
Now, what Samari says is not from his heart, but it's from who told him to, from somebody behind the scene, telling him to say what he's saying.
Who might that be?
Well, that's the question. It could be Australians, could be Indonesians, or it could be, well, no, Samari knows that well. If you ask him, see him next time, ask him who told him to say that.
I interviewed Mr. O'Cook for this program, and he was unkind enough to say that your opinions on these matters are not your own. What you say, he says, is not from the heart. He seemed to imply that the Indonesians and the Australians are telling you what to say.
When I talk to you sitting down here, I am talking about Michael Samari, the man who existed as he was before, and I talk my mind, and I have always spoken my mind. If I didn't speak my mind before, even he wouldn't be the leader of opposition.
Is it a difficult issue, though, for you? I mean, you must face quite some pressure from this side of the border.
There are a lot of pressures from our own people, and of course they worry about their Melanesian brothers on the other side. But I've made it quite clear, quite categorically, publicly, in private meetings and everywhere. My first responsibility as a Prime Minister, I am responsible for my 3 million people, 3.5 million or 3. And that's my prime responsibility. My job is to look after Papua New Guinean first. I will worry about the others later.
Looking after Papua New Guinea first can still involve some problems with Indonesia. This is the settlement of Green River, 21 kilometres from the border. From the air, there's not much to see, except the big airstrip which makes the place a strategic outpost. Late in March, the locals here reported 2 military jets had made a series of low passes over the town. The New Guinea government has no military jets. So, where did they come from?
They flew one behind the other, and the first circle, they circled around, and second, they came very, very low, this above the district office, and they flew towards Western Province.
Can you say what sort of aircraft they were?
They are military aircrafts, look like jet fighters. Say 30 to 45 minutes later, they came back.
So they came back again?
Came back again, and they fired something like bomb, and everybody, we heard the noise that they're firing bomb.
Now tell me about this bomb. What did that sound like? What actually happened there?
The actually sound is explode like, they sound like boom. That's,
Did you see smoke or?
yeah, I've seen the smoke. I've seen it.
Where do you believe those aircraft came from?
I believe they flew towards this side. Believe they belong to the Indonesian.
Could there be any doubt about that? Could they have belonged to someone else?
No, we believe they belong to the Indonesians.
A diplomatic row blew up over the Green River incident, and the military attaché here at the Indonesian embassy in Port Moresby left for home. The Indonesians denied categorically that they had violated New Guinea airspace.
You know, I incline to believe our innocent little people. They haven't got anything against Indonesians, you know. And it's the first time they've seen jets coming around and gone back. And they had an exercise with their forces over there. So it must be that they're mistakenly coming across our border. You know, that should be a simple answer. But they said, no, we didn't. So somebody's really telling lies there.
They have not come to us to say it is true that we violate the airspace, your airspace. And this is something that they are going to take it up again in the next conference that would be held between the two foreign ministers.
Do alleged violations of the border here disturb you? Is that something that you would worry you?
This is the first time this happened. I think last time it was, I cannot recollect, but I think some years ago there was an incident as such. But this is something that has concerned us. But
Make
again,
you angry?
Well, we were very disappointed that we did not hear anything, maybe because of lack of communication between us and Jakarta.
Blackwater River Camp is about 30 kilometres out of Vanimo on New Guinea's north coast. These days it's home for about 700 refugees who came across the border from West Irian 2 months ago. The refugees include a number of soldiers and policemen who tell the story of a failed rebellion against the Indonesian government in West Irian. On that occasion, they say, at least 2 men were executed.
I gave order to my soldiers, all the soldiers must fighting for Papua freedom. But we don't like in Indonesia. We like freedom.
We people very much.
The military men are defectors and make no secret of their desire for independence for West Irian, or West Papua, as they call it. Questions to them about life on the other side of the border prompt rebel slogans and a display of the flag of free West Papua.
Merdeka! Merdeka! Kami harus bertempur sampai merdeka.
We like for taking conflicts in order to match taking independence.
Why do you want independence? Why is independence important to you? What's this here? Is this the flag you have?
Yes.
Yes.
This is a flag from West Papua.
That's the West Papuan flag. The flag, your flag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like your flag of independence.
Yes. This is a flag from we independence.
Tom Irao was a lecturer at the University of Jayapura in West Irian. Now he too is a refugee at Blackwater River.
Many of the people who are against the Indonesian occupation, who struggled for the free West Papua, are being chased and put in custody and jailed, and many of them have been killed, and many of them have been beaten severely. And also we have heard of occasions in which some people have been put out their nails, their eyes have been put out, and their tongues have been put out, and every bad things, torture, they have done against these West Papuan freedom fighters.
The New Guinea government calls these people border crossers, not refugees. Yet part of the bill for their food and shelter is being met by the United Nations High Commission for Refugees. Many of them, especially the academics, public servants and army defectors, say they face reprisals if they return to West Irian.
If the New Guinea PNG government want to send us back, we would appeal to the United Nations to try to find ways to keep us here or in other countries, because we know that we will be killed or be punished if we go back to West Irian. And
why can you be so sure of that?
I speak from experience, and we know that. We know that the Indonesian government is a cruel government, and it treats people in a bad way. And from experiences, we have learned the case of East Timor, in which thousands of people have been killed. In West Papua, thousands of people have been killed. So this experience tells us that we should not go back to West Papua.
It's the ultimate difficulty for Michael Somari's government. If you call the border crossers refugees, you point the finger at the Indonesian government. Far from doing that, Mr. Somari has said these people will be sent back across the border.
Is it fair then to view these people as genuine refugees?
No, I don't think so. I think they came out of sheer frustration and fear of what's most likely to happen to them from the Indonesian end.
Yet if they say, we are frightened to go back, does that not make them legitimate refugees?
Well, I think there has been indication of people on the in Vanimo camp who have indicated, they would be returned as long as their life is guaranteed.
What guarantees are there that on returning to Indonesia, these people will be properly treated?
Well, we rely on a goodwill and understanding, our mutual understanding between the two countries.
What I said, or what my parties believe, and majority of Papua New Guineans believe, is that let's take it to the forum, to United Nations, to see what we could do. Have a peacekeeping or force to keep the border, or to see why these people constantly coming across to us.
I personally don't think it's a matter that the United Nations hasn't really settled anything.
While the refugees sing of freedom for West Papua, the Somari government talks of improved relations with Indonesia. The political realities are simple. Indonesia will never contemplate independence for West Irian, and no one is more aware of that than Michael Somari.
I think Mr. Somari, when it comes to Indonesia, is a realist. And his attitude has been that right from independence, Papua New Guinea has not been able to do anything about the Melanesian people in Irian Jaya about that aspiration for independence. It's something that the United Nations decided in the 60s before Papua New Guinea became independent, and therefore there's nothing Papua New Guinea can do about it. I don't think that there's any possibility that Somare would take the issue of Irian Jaya to the United Nations.
It would be drawing a long bow to say that the border tensions between New Guinea and Indonesia are likely to lead to military confrontation. But if it came to the crunch, these would be the men in the front lines. They're members of the Pacific Islands Regiment, based in Port Moresby. This is a training exercise in jungle warfare. Australia's strategic defence planning regards the New Guinea border with Indonesia as particularly sensitive. And according to leaked cabinet documents, the Hawke government has adopted a policy about the border. It is that the New Guinea government should be encouraged to suppress anti-Indonesian activities by the OPM. So far, these troops have not had to perform that role. There's some doubt whether they could.
The troops are very highly trained for jungle operations, but their ability to, or Papua New Guinea Defence Forces' ability to maintain these troops out in the field for extended periods is quite limited because of the resources that we have, particularly the transport resources. They're inadequate for us to maintain sound surveillance along the border.
It's almost as if the philosophy behind the Defence Forces here was never really built to take into account that kind of border problem.
Well, when you tailor a defence force, it has to take into account a number of scenarios or contingencies which could confront this country and challenge its own security. I believe that the border surveillance or border problems were never considered to be a major part in defence planning.
Just outside Port Moresby are the graves of 4,000 Allied servicemen who died defending New Guinea in the Second World War. Australia's links with this country go far beyond mere politics or economics. Here the bodies of Australian soldiers lie beside native New Guineans, the Fuzzy Wuzzy Angels who gave their lives in the bitter war against the Japanese. So where does that leave relations between Australia and New Guinea today?
Certainly Papua New Guinea looks to Australia for a lot of support, and certainly we would like to involve Australians in any problems that may occur in the future.
But if it does come to a crunch between Papua New Guinea and Indonesia, which side do you think Australia will back?
Well, that's a very difficult question to answer, because I think Australians' interests are not necessarily the interests of Papua New Guinea, and they may see things differently from our point of view, and I think they will be guided by what is their regional and international interests are. We have to assume the worst situation, that Australia might not support us, and we have to be self-sufficient.
Does that make you angry in any sense?
No, I think it's quite a realistic position to take.
I thought I knew Australians' relationship, but I don't now. You know, they have so hidden away, trying to pretend that they do not know anything. That's really bad.
What would you like to see Mr. Hawke do?
Or the government should come up and say, look, we are neighbors, what's going on here? Okay? Now, we've been friends to Indonesia as well as Papua New Guinea. Now, if, there should be some kind of agreement that in that border, Australia will be also a partaker. That if anything's happened, that if Australia feels that it was Indonesia's problem, of course, they will also report that to UN. But if it's going to be Papua New Guinea that will causing the problem, they will also. And Australia should become kind of a referee.
We take a different attitude in Papua New Guinea. We'd rather sit on a conference table with the Indonesians and talk and sort this problem out ourselves, because we share the common border. It's not the United Nations, it's not the Africans, it's not the Australians, it's not any other person. We think we can overcome this problem by sitting with the Indonesians and sort this problem out.
Tension along New Guinea's border with Indonesia is a problem that won't fade away. It's easy to dismiss the OPM as a ragtag army. Even more accurate to describe the West Irian independence movement as one of the 20th century's great political unrealities. But until the West Irianese themselves believe that, there will be more border crosses and more dilemmas for the New Guinea government. At the moment, the top priority is staying friends with the Indonesians. The West Irianese will have to look after themselves.